How much does it take to feed a family for a week?
The weeds are growing faster than what they can control.
7 million people are being pushed to the brink of starvation.
The entire nation could crumble.
You are the master farmer. Please show me how to farm.
This is the world's biggest humanitarian crisis.
The only way to free people is to bring Jesus Christ into the situation.
There's a few times in history where God has used his people to transform the entire economy of a nation, and this is one of those times. Renew is a nonprofit that helps develop tools, strategies, and media for Christians to share the gospel all around the world, especially in places that are hard to reach. One of the tools that we've developed is called the LightStream. It's this little black box that you can use to download and stream gospel media on smartphones.
Missionaries typically use the LightStream to get the gospel to people in remote places where there isn't internet or where people don't have access to go online and just get content on their phone. And so the LightStream almost acts like a library that they can access and get the content onto their phone no matter where they are in the world.
I remember the day when we got a request for over 1,000 LightStreams, and it was somehow connected to the government of Zimbabwe. Really curious and did a little more digging and found out there's this nonprofit called Foundations for Farming.
This organization that essentially wanted to stop hunger, and it isn't traditionally what we get. Traditionally, the LightStream is not used to combat poverty and hunger. So I think my main question when we got the request was, are they also sharing the gospel?
They're using the LightStream to help people out of poverty while also sharing the love of Jesus. We obviously wanted to know more about what was going on, so we actually flew to Zimbabwe to see the story for ourselves. When we landed in Zimbabwe, we connected with Daryl Edwards. He and his wife Hazel have been leading this team here in Zimbabwe, and together they've helped thousands of farmers escape poverty using a really unconventional farming method. And they say it came directly from God.
So they told us about Brian, a farmer in Zimbabwe whose crops were failing, and he cried out to God for help.
He basically walked into the bush and got on his knees and just cried out to the Lord, Lord, you are the master farmer. Please show me how to farm. And right there and then, the Lord showed him two things. He said, look around. Where in creation do I plow the soil and turn it over and damage it the way that you do? And where in creation do I leave my soil naked and exposed?
In nature, we never see plowing happen. And yet, things grow, life happens. We also never see just plain exposed soil. There's always leaves, twigs, grasses, and some kind of mulch covering the soil. That actually protects the soil from erosion. So when rain falls and wind blows, you don't lose all the soil and its nutrients. From that conversation with God, Brian started to apply what he learned. He didn't till his soil, and he covered his fields with mulch. And it worked. In fact, it worked really, really well.
So from that year, that farm began to make a profit. Almost like God saw a heart change and started to bless the place.
Brian was able to achieve up to 10 times greater yields by applying this new technique, and so he started training others to do that as well. He started calling it Farming God's Way, and that ultimately became a nonprofit that is now called Foundations for Farming.
Since then, Foundations for Farming has made a system out of all these methodologies, and a farmer can feed their entire family for a year by just using a small plot of land and simple tools.
How much does it take to feed a family for a week. If we know how much food a family needs for a week, then we can develop a piece of land that can be used to produce enough to sustain a family throughout the year.
So what we did is we designed a row. We have 52 rows, one for each week of the year. And that plot is exactly equivalent to 1/16 of a hectare. Generally, a farmer would plant up to 2 hectares of maize every single year, trying to feed himself. The weeds are growing faster than what they can control because 2 hectares is a large area to try and maintain. And ultimately, they do not achieve enough food for the family for the year.
So a tennis court full of maize or corn can feed a whole family.
Compared to 4 football fields.
Wow.
For many people, that was a huge barrier because in the traditional mindset, we need to be farming a large area of land in order to produce enough food for the family. Whereas Brian was trying to say, let's bring things to a much more condensed area where we can do things to such a high standard that it'll become way more productive.
The idea that a rural farmer with not a lot of land and simple tools can not just provide for their family, but be profitable is a huge deal because it means that anybody can do it.
It's just a download, a blueprint from the Lord to make it manageable and obtainable. They can say, I can do this.
So with the system, they began to invite people to the Foundations for Farming headquarters and teach them about farming, but also teach them about faith, give them the gospel, give them tools about healthy family and finances. And ultimately, they were showing them how to honor God with their lives. As the farmers get trained, they share it with their neighbors. The neighbors begin to share it with their neighbors, and it was from there that they were seeing entire communities start to take on these methods and really become different. Eventually, there were pockets all over the country where small villages were being transformed.
That's when disaster struck.
Zimbabwe is suffering its worst drought in more than a century.
This is the world's biggest humanitarian crisis.
In 2020, Zimbabwe wasn't just hit with a pandemic, but they experienced a catastrophic drought that threatened the livelihoods of millions of farmers.
Over 7.7 million people are being pushed to the brink of starvation.
We had a very devastating drought in this country. Nationally speaking, there was really no harvest to record.
So you have millions of farmers who not only are questioning if their parents and grandparents are going to get sick, but they're also not sure if they're going to be able to feed their kids.
When you are dealing with that level of crisis, and not just one, but two, there needs to be a solution. Otherwise, the entire nation could crumble.
As part of the government's move to try and feed the nation, they sent out all of their agri-tex workers to go and assess what was really out there.
The government did what they should have done, which was go out and check on the people. And I'm sure they weren't expecting to find what they did.
In nearly every province, they found these little beacons of hope where they would come into the community and they would just see these beautiful green crops of maize that were thriving, and all of these families had enough food to sustain themselves, and some probably even had an excess to sell. And they were like, what is happening here? How did you manage to achieve this harvest in this year?
The government found that the only farmers who had a harvest that year were the ones that had been trained by FFF.
The government approached us and said, we need to start training our officers. We began training a small key group of officers. And unfortunately, the message that was going out wasn't 100% correct.
The challenge is this can be a big game of telephone where somebody gets trained, and then when they go to train the next person, something gets lost in translation or something gets forgotten. That's where the LightStream comes in. So government workers can be given this device with videos of the FFF training. They can take that to the farmers. So when they go away, they still have access to the original material.
The live stream also had a lot of other really excellent content on there. So our other partners, Crown Financial Ministries, they produced the God Provides series. The Faith Comes From Hearing audio Bible is also on there. The Jesus movie is on there. Walking with Jesus, a few other things that are really good for people who need to know who Christ is.
We don't just send light streams out without the Word of God, without the Jesus film, without other resources for discipleship. So the really awesome, kind of shocking thing is that the government program that's helping farmers to thrive is also sending the gospel out all across the nation. So now we've just sent this huge shipment of light streams to Zimbabwe, and they start training government officers on how to bring videos of the Foundations for Farming training out to remote farmers all around the country. And during this training, when they're talking about erosion, they're talking about how to maintain good soil, 300 government officers all gave their lives to the Lord.
It wasn't because they stopped and preached the gospel. It was because they learned that they weren't honoring God's design.
They're learning about the way that God created the world, that good soil can sustain life. As they're learning, they're realizing the ways that they've been training people to actually damage the land. And they were cut to the heart, and they stop right there, and they repent, and they give their lives to the Lord. What was really crazy is while we were there, we were filming a similar training, and I found out that without realizing it, I filmed 10 more government officials giving their lives to the Lord during a soil erosion training. We were blown away by what we were hearing, so we wanted to go out to the field and actually see an example of a farm that has been transformed and see the light stream being used. So Larissa and I actually, we got to jump into a truck and go out to a village in northeast Zimbabwe and see for ourselves. The first place that we went was the farm of this guy named Joe. And first of all, I was so struck by Joe's joy and his just vibrant love for Jesus and for his community. We were so impressed by just how much he had internalized and implemented everything he had learned. He showed us the ways that his farm is night and day different from the way it was before.
He had built a new house, a gazebo, and a rainwater irrigation system for his vegetable garden.
The other thing, though, that he couldn't stop talking about was the light stream.
It works very, very, very good. I clap hands to you and Foundations for Farming with this thing. Before that light stream, we were calling people to come, to sit down like what we are, and you realize that people, they don't want to come. Just because of these light streams, we are giving each one of them every videos which is there, concerning about farming, how to care about people, how to care about Jesus. Because if I talk like what I'm doing, sometimes I miss some principles, but that system which is there, will never miss the principles.
One unique way that Joe was using the light stream is he was literally taking the Jesus film off of the light stream and loading it onto people's TVs so that the entire family could watch the films together. Part of the reason that he does that is because in most of the community, people are just watching whatever film they can get their hands on, and the films aren't great for the family, and it's actually bringing a lot of death and destruction. These films are something that can bring hope and life.
Finally, we met Blandina, Blandina is an agri-tech officer, so her job is to train these farmers using the LightStream, but in her own time, she's also just hosting like women's Bible studies.
One example was Blandina's neighbor. Her children were addicted to substances, and she was concerned, so she came to Blandina asking for help. She started to share the videos that were loaded on the LightStream, the Jesus Film, other gospel media, and her neighbor's kids began to watch the videos, and slowly but surely, they all repented. And so when I'm sitting there talking to Blandina, she's like, they are all following the Lord now, which is amazing.
She's a perfect case study of what is happening in Zimbabwe right now. Farmers are getting trained, and their livelihoods are being transformed, but then also souls are being saved. And we saw like a couple examples, but this is happening all over the country. In Genesis, God gave Joseph wisdom for agriculture and used that wisdom to save Egypt from starvation. That is the closest example I can think of in history to what's going on right now in Zimbabwe. It's not an exaggeration. Like there's a few times in history where God has used his people to transform the entire economy of a nation, and this is one of those times.
The government themselves say that there are 10 million from Fudza plots on the ground in Zimbabwe this season. You know, if every one of those produces even 500 kgs, that multiplied by 10 million, Zimbabwe will definitely feed itself this year.
Whoever is faithful with a very little will be entrusted with much. And that is exactly what's happened here. Brian Aldreve didn't set out to change the nation. God spoke to him and he was faithful with that, and he started sharing it with people. And now that training is going all over Zimbabwe. When Renew created the LightStream, we didn't expect it to be used on this large scale, but now it's being used with Foundations for Farming and the government of Zimbabwe to transform the economy of an entire nation and maybe beyond. It is amazing what God will do if we are just faithful with what he's given us. He will be faithful to multiply it way beyond what we could imagine. Thanks so much for watching Good Soil. We really hope that this story impacts you the way it impacted us. There are thousands of missionaries and evangelists all around the world who are trying to bring the gospel to the unreached, but they need tools like the LightStream, audio Bibles, and projectors to help maximize their impact. So if you want to support the gospel going forth all around the world using these tools, you can find details of how to give in the description below this video. Thanks so much.